This is the kind of, I'm very bad at graphic software, so my ideas are as primitive as my graphic software. But the point is that there is a new worldview going on thanks to the internet. Right? The old media model was pretty obvious. There was the world, we were the press, and then it went to the people. But now, if you draw the world around me, which is the way it should be drawn, I have all these new sources. The press is part of that. Other media is part of that. My peers are a huge part of that. For my son, it's a gigantic part. We get information from work and companies and government. And so if you look at the press sphere, the sphere in which we live now, it's a different structure. And I think that we start to see ourselves in new relationships with others. By the way, this presentation, for what it's worth, will be up at newsinnovation.com. There's a version of it there now through the wonderful offices of SlideShare. So, for example, in the recent kerfuffle about the Associated Press, they have their board meeting this morning. Some of their members will be here later this afternoon. We look at, I think, two fundamentally different economies striking each other in a millennial fashion, which is the link economy and the content economy. In the content economy, we own content. We could sell it to others. They could monetize it. They gave us money for that. It was a beautiful thing. It's too bad it is ending, but it is. In the link economy, of course, all you need is one copy of something online and then links to it. And that changes the economics in fundamental ways. In the content economy, we owned or controlled content. We syndicated or sold it because we had that control. We had many copies of it. We monetized at the edge, and they gave money back. The value was created with the content. In the link economy, one copy, many links. The important thing, what this requires of us is to be very open, very searchable, to open our drawers completely to Google and be found that way. We monetize at the center. We take advantage of those links. He who gets the links has to monetize. The links also bring us efficiencies. It's good news. Right? What my cheapest PowerPoint and blog line is, but it got quoted a lot, is do what you do best and link to the rest. And that's what the link allows us to do in news organizations. It allows us to, it forces us to specialize and do what we do best. So the value is then created with the links. In a kerfuffle recently with the AP over cease and desist on links, I saw these two worldviews hit each other because the wire service said, basically, you're taking our content and our value. And the bloggers said, we're giving you value by giving you links. And each fully believed what they were saying, and there we saw the clash. We also see a change in news, I think, about an idea of product versus process. I love the extruder. I just came back from a trip to Germany, and I have my Wurst fix, and so it makes me very happy. Don't tell my wife I have the cholesterol. So we had to view news as a product because it was the necessity of our means of production, right? It's obvious, but we printed once a day. We had one show a day. Get it right. We own and control that, or in some cases, we're lucky enough to monopolize that. It meant necessarily we were centralized, once a day, one way. And you know, I think this last line here is not meant as a joke, it's serious. Perfection was our standard because you do it once a day, don't screw it up, kid, was what we were all told, right? That's what we had to do. We enter a new world now where process is taking over. I saw this when I went to The Guardian talking about their new newsroom structure. And I saw this clash happen there, where the print people saw product and then online people saw process, and that the process was the product. And I was also at an Aspen Institute event where former president of a network said, don't judge us by our process, judge us by our product. It's a different worldview. It's a different way to look at what we do. If we think of news as a process, as I say here, it never starts, it never ends. It also demands that we become transparent. We put up in blogs what we call half-baked posts, which sounds abhorrent. And from a journalism professor's mouth especially, it sounds abhorrent that I would say, hey kids, put up half-baked things. But my friend Nick Denton, who I think is late getting up but will be here shortly, translates that in a good way. He says, when we put up this half-baked post, what we're saying to our public is, here's what I know, here's what I don't know, what do you know? And that we fill out the news that way in that kind of process. And I think it becomes important then, one of our greatest skills then becomes not to say what we know, but to say what we don't know. It's a different worldview. It just changes things. This process of news is all enabled by links, but importantly, and we'll get to this momentarily, it in turn enables networks. It makes networks possible. This is my silly little bad graphical chart that just says that we used to look at the story, again, as the center of this. And in many ways, it still is. But I was at a session with Jay Rosen at Columbia a while ago. How's that for being ecumenical, all three of us? And Jay was saying that we look at the discussion, if I misquote him, I know he'll tell me. We look at the discussion about our stories. It's always, we write the story first and then people discuss it. Enough about you, what about us? And the problem is that we think that's a reaction to what we're doing. And Jay said, no, it's probably the beginning of stories. In that discussion, we're seeing what people don't know, what they're confused about, what they're wrong about. And if we listen to that, then journalism should come out of that. So that becomes the discussion becomes the beginning of the process. And in that process of creating the stories, we do what a lot of great reporters are doing now with their blogs. They're asking the public what they know, who should I talk to, what should I ask them. And yes, a story still comes out of it. It can, most times it will. But after that then does come comment and correction, and it becomes a great Mandela, going around and around and around. And I think it's a different way, it's a different worldview. And if we look at our business on that basis, it forces us to look at our product differently as a process. And I wonder then, I'm now paid to ask obnoxious questions and say silly things. Thank you, Steve. But I wrote a blog post the other day and just a column for The Guardian last night, wondering whether the article is the best essential unit of journalism. It's what we had before. It was necessary before. Again, the article or the story was what went into the paper, what fit into the news broadcast. But if you look at the financial crisis especially, Adam Davidson is here from NPR. You'll hear from him later. And he started a podcast called Planet Money, recommended highly, npr.org/money, right? Where the process of unraveling this incredibly complex story is more than just a product. And it can't be told in a story, which become very repetitive. If you know more than the story says, then you're frustrated by not having enough depth. If you don't know enough, you're frustrated by having only one paragraph of background. It's a different thing. So what's possible in the new basic unit of news? And I speculate that it might have these elements. Yes, I start to believe that blogs cure everything, including the common cold. But the blog format is a process format. It's a process of discovery. Wikis are very good because they're a snapshot. What do we know now? Here's what we know. Links and curation. Curation is a word I've been overusing a lot lately. I think it's really important that that's one of the great values we bring to the world is to curate it for people. And that's part of this process of doing what we do best and linking to the rest. Someone there did a great story on it. Why replicate it? Let's link to that, and then let's add to it, become additive. And then discussion, input, correction, addition, all is important. And yes, we all want that to be more than, you suck. And we'll find ways to make that happen, because the people out there are smart, and we have to find new systems for that. So if we go past the article, we have a new structure for that. But then, how do we relate to our world? We have always been centralized. Again, by the means of production and distribution, we've always been centralized. Google is distributed. Google, so those are ads from the New York Times I got about 2 weeks ago. So that 4-bedroom, 5.5 bath, $80 million apartment, I bet you can get for a steal now. I'll bet it's still in the market. So those are the Times ads, the marketplace. We all went to the marketplace to do things. Now Google, of course, comes to us. Google thinks distributed. In the centralized world, I pick on Yahoo. No one's here from Yahoo, right? I pick on Yahoo versus Google. Yahoo, I think, is the last old media company because it operates on the models we all use, which is I own or control content, I market to get people to come in, I show you ads until I wave goodbye. Google, on the other hand, goes to wherever we are. Now, in that view, the brand is the magnet. People go to the site every day to see what they have to say.